Hello everybody and welcome to our lecture on conversions, also known as unit analysis. To keep things simple, we are only going to discuss units of length and how to convert those, but a similar procedure can be used for any other units, whether we are talking about volume or density or weights, things of that sort. It would go through the same procedure, but we'll just keep it simple and we'll deal with units of length for this lecture. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand that there are two different types of units. We have the standard unit, which is what we use in the United States. Standard unit. And we have the metric system, which is what most of the rest of the world uses. Okay, so we need to understand how to convert units within the standard system. We need to know how to convert things within the metric system. And then we need to learn how to convert from one unit to the other, from one system to the other system. If we get something that comes from overseas, like my little 49cc scooter that was made in Korea maybe, or China or Japan, I don't remember, but all of the units are in metric units. So if I need to fix anything on it or take anything off, I need to make sure that I understand my metric units, and if I could possibly get away with any of my standard wrenches in order to use it or not. Okay, so those are a few things there. So in our standard unit, we have, the nice thing is in our standard unit, we only have 4 units of length. Going from smallest to largest, we have the inch, we have the foot, we have the yard, and then our longest unit is the mile. Okay. So what I have set up is, in order for us to do a conversion from any of these units to any of the other of those units, there are tables out there that would do direct conversions from one to the other. But that's a lot of decimals to have to remember, because a lot of them are a decimal equivalent, or a lot of numbers that we have to recall in order to do inch to foot, or inch to yard, or inch to mile, or foot to inch, foot to yard, foot to mile, yard to etc. So instead, we're going to learn just a few of the basic conversions and then use those in order to convert from from one to the other. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that we have some sort of conversion with each of the 4 units. So what we're going to talk about, or the ones that we're going to deal with, is the fact that 1 foot is the same thing as 12 inches, right? That's the ruler that we've had in elementary school that we've probably smacked people around with or did a little sword fighting on. But it's 12 inches on that 1 wooden foot, which is a ruler, which is a foot. Okay. If you put 3 of those rulers together, that's what a yard is. So 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. And as an approximation, a yard is about the length all the way up to your waist, depending on how tall or short you are. It may vary slightly, but that gives you a good estimation of how big a yard is. A foot, remember, is that ruler, which also is about the distance from, I don't know, the middle of your palm or where your fingers meet your palm of your hand up to your elbow is approximately a foot. And an inch is approximately the distance on your thumb from the base knuckle that's by your palm to that next knuckle up. That distance in there is approximately an inch, just to give you a good idea. Okay. Now, mile, that's our only large unit that we have in the standard unit system. Okay. And you could go yards to miles, you could go feet to miles. Oftentimes we convert feet to miles more often than we deal with yards going to miles. So I've decided that it's probably easier just to learn that one conversion. And if we need to go from yards to miles, we can go from yards to feet and then feet to miles. I'll explain that in an example problem. So 1 mile is equivalent to 5,280 feet. It's a lot of feet. So keep that in mind though. So these are the numbers that you need to know, and those are the only ones that you need to know in order to switch from anything in the standard system of units of length. Okay. In the metric system, don't worry, I'll come back to the standard system, but in the metric system, there's many more units. Here, once again, in the standard system, we only have those 4: inch, foot, yard, and mile. In the metric system, they have 7 primary units. However, it's going to be the same no matter whether you were dealing with length or weights or volumes. Mass is essentially the weight, or volumes. It's going to be the same no matter what. Okay? And so I will get into those a little bit later, but I just wanted to let us know that there are 7 different units here. Primary units. Technically, they do break it down into a few more when need be. Okay? But let's just go through a few examples of how we convert in the standard system. Okay? So say I have 243 inches, and I'm curious as to how many yards that is. Okay. So in order to set up, anytime I'm setting up in the standard system, I'm going to do this same type of setup. I'm going to start off by stating how many units I have, 243. Okay. And then I'm going to draw a long line underneath that, and I'm going to cut that unit off from my next section. Now I'm trying to get to yards. Now if you recall from our distance, we know that 1 foot is 12 inches. We know that 1 yard is 3 feet. We know that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Now we don't need that one in this case because we're just trying to go from inches to yards. So the only conversion that I have dealing with inches though is inches to feet. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Now 1 feet is equivalent to 12 inches. It means that those are the same thing. So I'm going to put them in here on top of each other because we know from fractions, no, not fractions. Yeah, we know from fractions that if you have the same number on top that you have on the bottom, it equals 1. 3 over 3 is 1. 4 over 4 is 1. 7 million over 7 million is 1. So we want to use that same idea that anything over itself that is the equivalent is 1. Now in this case, they're going to look slightly different because we have different units, feet and inches. So I'm still going to put them over each other because that's a funky form of 1 is what I like to call that. But I need to make sure that I do it in the right order. Is it going to be 1 foot over 12 inches or 12 inches over 1 foot? How do I decide which way it goes? And that's where the unit analysis portion of this comes in. Because units act just like numbers. So we just said that 4 over 4 is 1 because anything over itself equals 1, or it cancels each other out. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Well, the same thing happens with units or the labels on your numbers. So right now I have 243 inches. I want to convert those inches into feet. I need to cancel inches out. Inches are on top, so I need inches on the bottom. So with my conversion of 1 foot is equivalent to 12 inches, I need the 12 inches on the bottom and the 1 foot on top. And then I make another bar. Once again, I'm doing that because inches on top will cancel with inches on the bottom. So now the label that I have left is feet. Again, I don't want feet though. I'm looking for yards. So I need to do another conversion and see if I can go from feet to yards. And sure enough, I have that conversion here. So again, I have to decide which way to put it in. I need feet to cancel. Feet are currently on top, so I need feet on the bottom to cancel out with the feet that I have on top. The unit I now have left is yards. That's what I'm looking for, so I know I'm done at this point. Now the math that I'm going to do is I take all the numbers on top and I multiply them together. 243 times 1 times 1. Remember, putting numbers in parentheses indicates multiplication. As this is an algebra class, we don't want to use the cross or that X sign to mean multiplication because it does look like the unknown letter X. And then all the numbers on the bottom we multiply together. 12 times 3. When we're written in a fraction like this, it's assumed you simplify the top and you simplify the bottom. So I'm going to multiply all the numbers on top together and get 243. I'm going to multiply all numbers on the bottom together and get 36. And now I just get out my handy dandy or my brain and I divide those out. When I simplify that, I end up with 6.75. Now remember to label this. This is going into our space up here. It's yards. Okay, so it's 6.75 yards. Okay. I can do the same conversion going from any unit to another unit in your standard system. Let's do one more. Let's say I have 3.2 miles and I want to know how many, we're going back to yards, that is, because we don't have a direct relationship to yards. So again, we're going to set it up as 3.2 miles, put the line underneath and chop it off. And now I go into my conversions. The only conversion I had with miles is going to feet. And it was 1 mile was equal to 5,280 feet. So I put the miles on the bottom because I need it to cancel, and the 5,280 feet on top. Again, I'm doing that because the miles here cancels with the miles there. We can only cancel things if one of them is on top and the other is on the bottom. Okay? Now I have feet, but I need yards. My conversion with feet was that 3 feet equals 1 yard. Again, I have to put the feet on the bottom because I'm trying to cancel it with the units of feet on top. Now I'm in yards, and so I'm done with the setup. Now I can just do the math. Again, we take all the numbers on top and we'll multiply those together. So I'm going to take 3.2 times the 5,280 times the 1, which technically we don't need because, right, we multiply by 1, we just get the other number back. And on the bottom, we have 1 times 3. Same thing there. Okay. Okay. By multiplying those numbers together, on the top, we get 16,896. On the bottom, we get 3. So when we divide that by 3, we get a total of 5,632 yards, because once again, that was the unit that was left. 5,632 yards. Now 3.2 miles, that's what's equivalent in a 5K. It's approximately 3.2. Actually, I think it's 3.1, but close enough now that I think about it. So that's like a 5-kilometer walk run that you have is going 5,632 yards. If you think of it, a football field is a little over 100 yards. It's 100 yards from end zone to end zone, but if you add the extra 10 on each end zone, you're at 120. But we'll just say 100 for sakes. So that means that to go if you're completing a 5K walk or run, you're walking the length of the football field from end zone to end zone approximately 56 times. So if you go end line to end line, it'll probably be a little bit less than that, 56 times. So just to give you a little perspective on what that is. Okay. All right. Now the metric system. Metric system is a lot easier to deal with than the standard system because it's uniform throughout. You always have your base unit, and we are talking about length. So the unit of length is a meter. And this is how I always set up my metric system. I put my base in the middle there, and then I have 3 units that are smaller that I put to the right, and 3 units that are larger that I put to the left. if I have a meter, which is, once again, a meter stick is very similar to a yard. It's not exact, but it's similar, so you have a good understanding of the length of it. Once again, that's approximately your height up to your waist or so. Most men are about 2 meters because it's a little over 6 feet in height, so that gives you a good estimation there. Now, if I take that meter stick and I break it into 10 sections, 10 even sections, each of those sections is going to be approximately the length of my hand. Now, again, depending on how big our hands are, I've got short Polish hands, and it's a little bit smaller than my hand, so it's approximately that. That is called a decimeter, and it has the prefix deci. A decimeter, okay? Because decimal, we have the decimal system, okay? All of the numbers that we've learned in our lives is from the decimal system. Not because it has a decimal point, that's a different piece of the decimal system. But ours is a decimal system because deci is the prefix that means 10. And in our number system, we only have 10 numbers, 0 through 9. So when we broke that meter into 10 spots, that's why each of those is called a decimeter. Okay? Now, if I take each of those decimeters and I break that into 10 spots, then I get a length called a centimeter with the prefix centi. And a centimeter, okay, is approximately the width of your pinky nail or the width of a larger paper clip. That is approximately a centimeter. Centi is the prefix that means 100. Century, there's 100 years in a century. Okay. Why is it 100? Well, if there's 10 centimeters in a decimeter and there's 10 decimeters in a meter, each of those decimeters has 10 centimeters, all 10 of them. So 10 times 10 is 100. So there are 100 centimeters in a meter, thus the prefix centi. Okay. Now, if you break that centimeter into 10 even spots, you have a millimeter. Milli is our prefix for 1,000 because that would make it 1,000 of those millimeters are in a meter. Okay. The width of a millimeter is about the width of the wire on a paper clip is approximately a millimeter, just to get you for size reference. Okay. Now we can go the other direction. Those are our 3 smaller units. Now we can go the other direction as well. Now go back to that meter stick, which is once again about half your height. And if you lay 10 of those down, you're going to have a decameter. Now, again, that's going to be from that decimeter, that prefix deci, meaning 10. But we need to change it. So what they do is they, instead of making it that soft C sound, they make the C into a hard sound, and then they just change it into a K. So it's a decameter. Deca is our prefix, meaning 10. So that's a lot of your classrooms are, the larger classrooms would be about a decameter wide, as a good example. Now, if I put 10 of those down, I have what's called a hectometer. Hecto. And a hectometer is going to be approximately the length of your football field with one end zone. Not both of them, but with one end zone. And then if you put 10 of those down, you get the metric system's largest unit, which is called the kilometer or kilometer. All right, so the abbreviations for all of these is something that we also need to know. So the meter is your base unit, and in this case it's just an M for meter. Again, that might change. If you were dealing with a volume, it would be a liter. If you're dealing with mass, it would be a gram. But everything else stays the same. Decimeter has a prefix D with that M, decimeter. Centimeter is the C with the M for meter. Millimeter is millimeter. And again, that second M on all of those would change to either an L if you're dealing with liters, or G if you're dealing with grams. Now, decameter, we can't use DM again because we've already used that for decimeter. So this is the fun part, because a decameter is a damn. And that's your abbreviation for a decameter. Hectometer is HM, and kilometer is KM. Okay. Now, notice when we were doing the description of all of these that it was 10 of these makes one of these, 10 of these makes something of this. So everything's a multiple of 10, which makes conversions really easy. So if you have your list in order, like I have here, largest on the left, smallest on the right, it's really easy to do a conversion in the metric system. So say I had 143.7 centimeters, and I wanted to know how many damn that is. Okay, this is how you do a conversion in the metric system. First of all, you place yourself on your list, the green list that I have up there. You place yourself on the unit that you're starting with. I'm starting with centimeters, so I'm going to place myself right here. Doesn't have to be fancy. And then you count how many steps it takes to get to the unit you're converting to. I'm converting to dams, so I have to go to the left. Now, you never count the step that you started on. You always count your next one as your first step. So it's 1, 2, 3. 3 steps. So we moved 3 steps, and that was to the left. So this is what you do with your decimal point in your number. You're going to move it 3 steps to the left. Here's my decimal point. Moving it 3 steps is going 1, 2, 3. So we end up with 0.1437. That's all you had to do for a conversion. Let's try another. Say I had 62 hectometers, and for some reason I wanted to know how many millimeters that is. So once again, I place myself up on my strip, my labels here, at my hectometer, and I count to get to millimeters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And which direction did I walk? I walked to the right. So I'm going to move my decimal point 5 spots to the right. Now, where is my decimal point in the number 62? If the number doesn't have a decimal, there's always a decimal point at the end. So at that point, that's where I move my decimal point 5 spots to the right. So if I rewrite it down here, it's 62, and there's my decimal point, and I move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots to the right. Now, that made an empty egg carton with all those gaps. I have to fill in those egg cartons with eggs or zeros. So I have 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, comma. So 62 hectometers is 6,200,000 millimeters. That's a lot of millimeters. Okay. And that's how you do your conversions there. Now, I'm going to make a second video on showing how to go convert from the standard system to the metric system and vice versa.